I don't know about you guys. Obviously, I know you all follow the news very closely, and I know the chat does as well. And obviously, we had Gamescom this week. There was rumors going around about a possible big Xbox game going to another platform, which leads me to other questions. Okay. So I feel like with each passing week, we got more reasons to believe that Xbox is going to go third party. With the recent news of Indiana Jones coming to the PS5 this spring, I specifically heard April. What do you guys think are the odds that this could come to Switch 2 as a launch title? That's one. Two, the game will be running on Series S. So again, I say to you, why not? Then the check Microsoft had to write to Disney to use the indie IP couldn't have been cheap. So they'll need to make their money back. And the only way to do so is by releasing indie on platforms that actually have a large user base. So, in my humble opinion, it would make sense for Xbox to release indie on the Switch. And then you also got to look at they're releasing it on PS5. That's their direct competitor. They don't view Nintendo as a direct competitor. Remember? Nobody views Nintendo as a direct competitor. So you're literally taking
assassin.
Yeah, you're taking
They're the market leader that nobody wants to admit is the leader. So we're just
I know.
with them. Okay, yeah, all right.
This is your biggest IP though. This is the indie IP is like their biggest, in my opinion, IP of this year, like their new IP. Okay?
Oh, sure.
I'm not talking about everything else they have, but like to me, if you look at the release calendar outside of the annual Call of Duty, this is probably their most hyped game this year. And you're going to be releasing that in five months later, essentially on PS5. And hey, if the Switch 2 is coming out around March or April, why not, guys? Why not? I think it could run it just fine. And they really do need to make some money back. What do you think?
Phil Spencer's a liar.
We know that.
Technically, he didn't lie. Technically, he didn't lie.
What, do you have the exact quote?
Hold on.
I saw it a few times today on Twitter, and like my take on that is, do I think Phil's a bad guy? No, absolutely not. I really don't.
I think he's a bad guy.
Yeah, I don't think any of us do. Actually, I think he really does care about video games. But again, he's a company guy, and he has to be in order to keep his damn job. I worked in corporate for many years. Sometimes you got to do shit you don't want to do, and you try and do it to the best of your ability. And you have to say things sometimes and do things that you just don't really want to do. But it's that, or you're probably not going to work there, right? And I think Phil sometimes has to say shit that he doesn't want to say, right? Yeah. And sometimes he knows. I mean, think about the time when Reggie, our boy Reggie, of all guys, had to say, no, we're not announcing anything. And then the next day they announced Nintendo 3DS. I mean, we all remember that, right? Mm-hmm. That doesn't make Reggie a bad guy or a liar. He just can't say it. There's just certain things they can't say. And also, I think Xbox, I think there's two, possibly, from what I've read, kind of warring factions within that company about the direction they're going. Whether we're staying here in the console business or we're going full on third party, we're going to be a software company and we're going to go back to being called Microsoft Gaming. And then I think the bigwigs in the company aren't even participating in that. And you know what their plan is? Their plan is the cloud. That's where Microsoft's putting all their money. They put all their investment into the cloud. That's where they think they can win, because they know they can't win the console war. They know they can't. They've raised the flag, and I think that's smart. But they think they can win cloud. That's where they're going. And even Phil said, I think he said it yesterday or this morning on IGN Live. I tuned in for a second. I could only stand so much because it was just so much corporate, like kind of word salad. I'm like, oh God, this is just so staged. So I had to turn it off. It just bothers me. But you could tell based on what Phil was saying, that we're all going to have to change the way we play video games and the way we release our games to everybody. And I know what he was referring to. He's referring to the cloud. This was on IGN Live this morning.
Yeah.
They were interviewing him. They're giving Microsoft all the PR in the world. And I'm sure Microsoft was like, yeah, we'll do it. Why not? Because we're trying to sell this hardware and get rid of it. But the quote he gave, I know it, and if I could find it, but he was alluding to what the overall game plan is without saying it. That's the cloud, guys. So that's why I think too, they don't care. They're going to release these games on PS5 and Switch, and they're going to make as much money as they can and stack as much money as they can because they don't care about the console wars anymore. They're finishing up this generation. Maybe the next one they'll release a portable. But I mean, you can play Xbox on a Roku stick.
Sure.
And on an Amazon stick. What do you need the console for if you're going all in on the cloud?
I think I know why Xbox fans are mad. I just kind of looked up. So what they were really mad about was back when they made the initial announcement about bringing 4 games to other platforms, whether it was Switch or PlayStation 5 or both. What they did say at the time is that Starfield and Indiana Jones are not one of those 4 games.
Yep.
And that's true. They were not one of those 4 games. What he did not say is that those games won't go to PlayStation 5. It just wasn't going to be one of those initial 4 games that they were going to learn from and make future decisions. And the funny thing is, I think the reason that people feel like it's a lie is, well, okay, that was in February. It's coming out basically practically a year later. It's coming out on PlayStation 5 from those comments, meaning it was probably already in development for PlayStation 5 when he made those comments. So people took those comments to mean those games aren't going multi-platform, and that's not technically what he said. What he said is it's not one of the initial 4 games going multi-platform. And I think people just feel a little betrayed because, like, why would you even bring those games up as examples of games that aren't going multi-platform right now when you already knew you were working on a multi-platform version of that game? And that game in specific, not Starfield, like specifically Indiana. So I get why people are upset, but you're talking a bit about the corporate stuff. I think Phil Spencer, after the Activision, I mean, he's been in a tough position since he got there. He was handed Xbox in a really bad place.
Yeah.
And he spent most of the Xbox One generation like trying to rebuild trust and trying to get people back. And for some reason, they went with the dumbass name of Xbox Series S and X. I don't know what the fuck they were thinking with the name of that system, but whatever. They stuck with the terrible naming of the Xbox One and the Xbox One X and One S. I don't know why the fuck they did that, but maybe they thought there'd be some continuity there or something, but I don't really think it's worked out for them. And I heard like Xbox this generation has sold somewhere in the neighborhood of potentially 26 million. I'm not sure. Guys, that's more successful than the GameCube. So, I mean, it's not like the worst thing out there. It's just not doing as well as obviously PlayStation and Switches. But what I find interesting is, one, Xbox fans, I think, are just pissed because this is like the realization that Microsoft is going third party. It's happening, and it's very hard to accept if you've been playing Xbox since the very beginning. Like, it's just really, really hard to accept that this platform that I've invested so much time and money in, hey, in 10 years might not be around anymore, but their games are still around, but they're on other platforms. And a lot of it goes to the console warring. Like, I don't want to play the game. I don't want to have to buy a PlayStation to play these games. And it's like, okay, well then don't, by the way, buy a Switch too. After all, not a competitor, right? Only going to get like all the games, but not a competitor. Yeah. Okay. 1.3 billion games have sold on the thing. Not a competitor, though. It's actually funny. As of, I think, Paul Gale Network put this up on Twitter today. Like last month, Switch has been competing longer against PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series than it did against PlayStation 4 and Xbox One.
Those were some startling statistics. I read that like twice back this morning. I read it and I read it again, and then I took a harder look. I'm like, holy shit, this is crazy.
Yeah. And by the way, if you go look at that post, Nintendo's been dominating during both periods, both the PlayStation 4 period and the PlayStation 5 period.
Unheard of.
Domination.
Unheard of, right? This has never happened ever.
Like 33 straight months of number one on the MPD. It's a record.
Hell yeah.
It's never happened before. Not even close. Like, it's insane. So, anyways, that's how. By the way, this might sound like we're like bashing on Xbox a little bit. I don't feel like that's what we're doing. I think it's just accepting the reality of what's happening. Phil Spencer was put in a situation. I feel like when he wanted to make a splash, right? He believed in Game Pass. He knew it was going to be like 10 years of probably losing money to be like Netflix. But then when we get to that end, we get to reap all these massive profits from having this massive 100 million plus user base. And that sounds great on paper. And that's what Netflix did. It lost billions of dollars for 10 years. And now it's one of the most profitable streaming services there is. And they did it, and they got there by investing a lot of money over the years to make original content that eventually paid off for them in the end. But what I find fascinating is he thought, okay, I need to go to corporate. Activision Blizzard's on the table. That's the splash. Can I get them to approve this $70 billion deal? That's what we need for Game Pass. And then corporate probably told them, fine, we'll sign off on this. But like, we're looking at your numbers. They don't look good. You gotta bring your games to where the players are. This isn't. We're a business. If we're gonna spend $70 billion, we need to make money. And the only way they can immediately do that is to go multi-platform.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think there's a choice. It sounds good to just lose money, invest in Game Pass, pay off in the end. Microsoft could afford to eat the losses, but he had to get approval from corporate for a $70 billion, the most expensive acquisition in gaming history. One of the biggest acquisitions in U.S. history. Like, to do that, yeah, corporate wants to make money immediately. The only way is multi-platform to do it immediately. They at the moment they approved that deal, they were telling Phil Spencer, we don't believe in your vision. So is Game Pass going to die off one day? That I don't know. Is the cloud going to die off one day? I don't know. What I do know is they have to go multi-platform.
Yeah.
Phil Spencer had this whole future, and he outlined this in several different documents and details in court. Like, his future vision was Game Pass subscription service that you could either play on the cloud or play locally on a device if you prefer to play that way. And via cloud, we're on everything. We're on your phone. We're on your smart fridge. We're on, your TVs. They just come bundled in like Roku and Netflix. That was his vision. And I think that vision's been kind of like shattered. Like he wanted the Activision Blizzard deal so bad. And corporate's response is, fine, we need all the money now. And because of that, I don't know that his vision of that cloud future, that Game Pass future, like I kind of feel like, Game Pass might just go away just naturally over time. Because if they're making all their money on PlayStation, Netflix, Nintendo Switch 2, if like they're looking at the margins and Microsoft corporate's going like, dude, why are we putting these games on Game Pass right now? Look, you're going negative on Xbox, but we're in the green on all the other systems. What the fuck are we doing putting shit on Game Pass? It's not making enough money to justify putting games on it. What are we doing? And then when Phil Spencer eventually, because this is the thing, people can already kind of feel it. Because what was the promise of Game Pass? All Microsoft published games day one. All of them.
Yep.
So far, that's remaining true. They're doing it with Call of Duty this year. So far, it's remaining true. But people are on edge because we can kind of feel that promise is probably getting broken sometime in the next.
They're also increasing the price.
They
increased
the price, yeah. And sometime
few
in the
times.
next few years, there's going to be a game or two that's not day one on Game Pass, and that promise is going to get broken, and people are going to shit all over Phil Spencer some more. And I'm like, I think Phil Spencer, because, and you could blame, maybe he blames himself because he's the one that wanted the Activision Blizzard deal. But I mean, that Activision Blizzard deal, people talked about how they didn't want Microsoft to own Call of Duty or this and that. Yeah, but in the end, nothing's really changing. Everyone's still getting all the games. In fact, what's happening now, if you're a PlayStation fan, you should be thrilled that Activision Blizzard deal went through. I think if that deal didn't go through, you're not getting Indiana Jones. You're not dreaming of Starfield coming over. You're not dreaming of getting Halo. But now, because the acquisition went through, there's so much corporate pressure to make money right now. Now, like, everything's probably going to go to PS5, even if it's on like a 3-month, like, and that's what this feels like what, a 4-month, maybe a 6-month delay. It's not that big of a wait. Like, people can wait 6 months.
Has there been any numbers of how the 4 games did? Like Sea of Thieves, Hi-Fi Rush.
Sea of Thieves, I heard, is
Grounded
doing
and-
excellent on PS5. I did hear that, but I haven't heard about Hi-Fi, Pentiment.
Microsoft's weird because they don't publish sales data anymore. They just publish overall profit margins. So it's like there are some territories we do have factual individual sales for, but that's usually still only physical. Because you got to get the digital data from Microsoft, and then you have Game Pass on top. Obviously they have a good idea of that already. I think I know I heard Sea of Thieves was doing pretty good on PS5. I'd be very interested in like what grounded numbers are like on the Switch. I think I'd be very fascinated to know like how many people actually picked it up. I know I have it, but I was sent a code, so like that doesn't count.
I bought it for the just so I could say I have an Xbox game on my
Next
Switch.
game. Yeah, you get MLB The Show once too.
Oh yeah, I buy MLB The Show every year on Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, man. Hey, Switch, it's like a PC. You get your Xbox published games and your Sony published games, baby.
At least MLB The Show has cross progression, so I can play it.
Everyone's publishing multi-platform except Nintendo.
I do think Call of Duty Black Ops 6 will be a good indication if they could sustain Game Pass the way it is now. Like they'll see what their numbers are after Black Ops 6 comes out.
I think they're adding it. Like I know they obviously have that promise. We're always going to add it, but I honestly think Black Ops for them, Phil Spencer's trying to like push for corporate. You got to let me put this on Game Pass. I think it's going to really. Here's our projections for our bump in subscriber growth if we do that. Because hey, everyone who wants to play it on PC, why not get it on Game Pass? Why not save money and get access to all these other games? I can tell you why. Because the Microsoft store on it sucks. I use Game Pass on my PC to play like Age of Empires and there's some other games coming out that I want to play. Age of Mythology coming out and stuff. The RO World History game I'm gonna play on PC as well, and I'm doing that all through Game Pass. To the Microsoft store, the Xbox thing is so bad. I don't know how Microsoft is a PC company and their own inbuilt Game Pass Xbox ecosystem is so bad on PC. Like they should just like find a way to like work with Steam and like outsource it and just have a separate subscription service through Steam that's Game Pass to get access to it. I don't know. I don't even know if they could do that, but it's really bad. I think that, man. Eric, what do you think about this? Like, we both own Xboxes.
Yeah.
So like, how are you feeling about this? I mean, you've been playing Xbox since the beginning.
Yeah, I have. Honestly, to me, it's not the end of the world. I don't game as much as I used to anymore. So, my biggest gaming system is my Switch. So the more games I can get on Switch, I'm fine with. So, I guess I don't have to spend an extra $500 to get an Xbox again.
Look,
so,
the more hope I have for a remade Conker's Bad Fur Day being released on Switch 2, the better, man.
There is that.
Bring it everywhere. We're
There
not bringing it
is
to my
that.
Switch 2, man.
There's they know that people want Banjo. Phil mentioned it.
Phil's mentioned it many times. Remember, Phil's a liar. I literally think it's gonna turn out like 3 years from now that he has told a number of lies, but I also think they weren't lies at the time that he said it. Like
they're probably not.
He talked about it today. Like the landscape has changed, and it's not just Microsoft. Sony's publishing their games on PC.
Yeah,
and now it's not just always delayed. Sony published Helldivers 2 day one on PC. That wasn't even a delay between PS5. There's day one on PC.
And look how well that did. So yeah, of course they're going to.
Yeah, you think they're not going to start doing more day ones on PC?
I feel like they owe it though to the shareholders, both companies, because they've already seen now that for Sony, that if you release games on PC, you're going to make way more money. So now if they don't do that, they're going to be like, why didn't we do this? At the next shareholders meeting, numbers are down. Well, why didn't we release this game on PC? Don't you think that would have made some money? Same thing though with Microsoft. Because once you've done it, that door's open. Obviously, Nintendo's not done that. And I never expect them to. But once you've done it, now they expect you to, the shareholders. And why wouldn't they? When they can make more money. We talked about this maybe a month ago, right? I brought it up. And it was my topic when I was breaking down all that math about how much more money Microsoft can make. Dude, they're in the business of making money. They always have been. Any company is. But to the extent of Microsoft, I mean, they live for that.
They're a trillion-dollar company.
Yeah, they live for money. And they're not going to turn down an opportunity to go make more money. I think they're a very competitive company. I think at the beginning of all of this, they probably thought, and I'm talking, back in 2001, they probably thought they were going to come up into the console business and start wrecking some shit. I really believe that. And if you went back and looked at some of those conferences from back in the day, it's not hard to believe that. They were very confident, sometimes cocky. They tried to buy Nintendo. Remember? Multiple times from what we've gathered. But I think they thought they were going to really own shit. And I think they may have even stayed in longer than they anticipated without getting to that number one spot. And I think they've honestly accepted the fact that they're not going to be number one. And that what we really need to focus on now is how to turn enough profit, how to make more money, and then get ourselves out of this mess. Whether that's through the cloud eventually, because I don't think the cloud's ready. Even, some people in the chat were saying that too. Like they don't like cloud. I don't like cloud. Cloud's crap. Not a fan at all. But maybe down the road, when we're on 5G everywhere, now it's 6G, maybe cloud will be better, right? But right now, I definitely don't think it's sustainable, but Microsoft, it would be in their best interest to release games on PS5 and Switch because you will make the most money.
You know what I find interesting? I've talked at length with some fans that get into these like console wars about the business side of the companies because we're talking about all these games going like third party. Microsoft's doing it, and Sony's at least doing it with PC. Maybe they eventually do it with Xbox. If Xbox had a big enough user base, they felt like it would make money there. Maybe they'd end up doing it with Switch too. Remember, not a competitor.
Look at Horizon.
Yeah, we're already getting Lego Horizon, and that's published by Sony. I feel like these companies are doing it, these platform holding companies, because they operate differently than Nintendo does, because Nintendo operates as a zero debt company. They don't take out loans ever. Which means they owe nobody nothing. Other companies, Microsoft included, like they're $1 trillion company, but that's on paper. They don't actually have $1 trillion laying around. That's all stock valuation. That's just other people valuing your stock at a certain level. They don't actually have trillions of dollars sitting around. And the thing is, Sony and Microsoft both operate in the same way, in that they're all about trying to keep as much money as possible, hence all the big bonuses and all the stuff they give out to the CEOs and all this stuff, and avoid paying taxes as much as they can. And so they actually are trying to make their balance sheets at the end of the year kind of be close to break even, where it looks like they didn't really make anything. Yet the company added and bigger, and they did this and they did that, but the balance sheet doesn't reflect that. The balance sheet looks like, oh, you didn't really make that much money this year. That's because any net profit you have, you pay extreme taxes on to the government. And so a lot of companies operate in this way. So what they'll do is they'll intentionally take on loans, and like this acquisition of Activision Blizzard, they didn't just hand over 70 billion in cash. They actually took out a loan from a bank to do it, because they might. I think Microsoft might have potentially had enough cash on hand, but usually these companies don't have that kind of cash on hand to make that acquisition. But because of their company valuation, they qualify for loans. Sony has about $10 billion or so in a bank, but they owe over $130 billion in loans to various different banks. So what happens at these companies is when they have quarters that are lower than expected, they can actually default on their loans. And that's bad.
Mhm.
The thing about being a company that's always taking out loans to try to zero out your balance is it puts you at extreme risk of bankruptcy. So whenever you see like, oh, Sony's laid off these people, or Microsoft's laid off another 25,000 people, or whatever, yes, there's corporate greed involved in that and all this stuff. Absolutely, CEOs are paid way too much money. We can talk all about that, but it's also they had to cut costs immediately, or they would have defaulted on loans that could cause you to go into bankruptcy. Like Microsoft, they're $1 trillion. Yes, which means they have a lot of loans. They got to make a lot of money to pay those loans. So when they take it out, the presumption is they'll always have the money to do it. It's actually a very risky business. But the reason you do it is, one, you get to keep most of the money you make. Unfortunately, that keeps getting paid out to the corporate people and not necessarily all the employees underneath should get their salaries raised or something. That's my personal opinion. They should spread the wealth more among the employees, but that's a different conversation. Nintendo is a risk-adverse company. See, the reason you want to take out the loans and avoid taxes, you make more money personally, and then also you can expand the company quicker and become a mega corporate. You can become a $1 trillion company like Microsoft. Nintendo's never going to be a $1 trillion company. But Nintendo, also, the way they do it without ever taking out loans is there's zero debt. So Nintendo wants to maximize their net profits every year. They want as much as possible. They'll pay all the taxes. They don't care. They want to keep adding to their bank account. Because if Nintendo's going to make an acquisition, they got to have the money for it. They're not going to borrow money to buy a company. They're going to go to their bank, take money out. When they bought part of Dena, they went to their bank, they took money out. They didn't get a loan. They had money in the bank. And what this also does is when you have a down period, like Nintendo did for the first 2 years of Wii U and 3DS, when they actually went in the negative, Nintendo didn't owe anyone anything. That negative was to themselves. They owed money to themselves by going in the negative. They spent more money than they brought in. All right, well, the money was already spent. So, yeah, their bank account went down a little bit. But that's when all the reports came out that Nintendo's, at the rate they were losing money those 2 years, Nintendo could have did that for 50 years and not gone under. Because that's what happens when you don't owe anyone any money. And now this generation, Nintendo has made more profits than ever. It's on the balance sheets. The last 6 years for Nintendo has been the most profitable the company's ever been, despite only having one system. And I think what's going on, these other companies, they just got to make as much money as possible right now just to kind of like stay afloat and avoid defaulting on loans. Whereas Nintendo, they want to make as much profits as possible. You ever wonder why doesn't Nintendo discount their games? Why don't they lower the price of their systems? Well, Nintendo needs to keep growing the bank. Because what if something bad does happen? What if something bad happens? You just mentioned it like earlier. Hey, what if the factories go under? Mm-hmm. Nintendo just burned money then. Mm-hmm. They just burned money. It's gone. Well, they got to be able to cover that. Because they're not going to take out a loan for it. Because that puts them in deep shit. Because if they burn their money and suddenly they burn through their bank balance trying to cover that, and then all of a sudden they take on a loan, now they owe money that they haven't even made yet. And then if the next system bombs, well, shit, Nintendo's out of business. So they're very risk adverse with how they do it. And that, I think, is why Nintendo is the only one not going multi-platform. Because they don't have to. They don't need to bring their games to PC. They don't need to bring their games to PlayStation. They actually believe what helps keep their company safe is that you have to invest in Nintendo's ecosystem to play Nintendo's games. They feel like that keeps them safe. It keeps them in control. And they've been right so far. They're the only company today that believes exclusives sell systems.
Yeah.
PlayStation popped off with PS1 due to third parties. It's third-party games that made PlayStation popular, not their exclusives. You can go back and look at the sales of the games. It's Final Fantasy. You know, it's third-party games that used to be on Nintendo that went over to PlayStation. You look at Xbox. I mean, come on, is there any generation where Xbox was carried by their first party? Is there any of them? Maybe Halo. Maybe the first Xbox,
Yeah,
right? Halo.
Just
Halo
Halo.
might have been like, but that was Xbox, the first Xbox. The Xbox 360 sold 80 million. It wasn't just because of Halo. Call of Duty. I remember they had the Call of Duty marketing deal most of that generation too. So, by the way, this isn't me like bashing what Sony and Microsoft choose to do as companies. The way they operate as companies is the way like most companies operate, because they want to they no one likes making like $1 trillion and then having to pay 800 billion of it in taxes. Like that just sounds bad. And Nintendo does pay maximum tax penalties. They just don't care because they know that their company is safe. No one can take that company from them because they don't owe anyone anything. That also means Nintendo will never be as big as these companies. They'll never be able to make a $70 billion acquisition, at least not in our lifetimes. But Nintendo is smart. How did they learn to diversify their revenue, guys? What's Nintendo doing now? How are they making money? Oh, man,
Movies, theme parks,
Lego. Like they've
Don't forget about this.
yeah,
Princess Peach Teddy Grahams, dude.
Nice.
Partnering with
Oh, there was the Oreos too, weren't
the
there?
Oreos to the Mario
movie?
Oreos. Yeah, they've had cereals and like Nintendo's expanding with consumer grade products that don't affect them having to bring their games to other platforms. And I think we're in this flux right now where like Xbox, people who've been faithful to Xbox for a long time are mad because they grew up with the exclusive generation. People on PS5, I've even seen some of them bitch about Helldivers being day one on PC. I've seen them bitch about Lego Horizons going to Switch. And it's like, yeah, because you guys also grew up in what I basically call the exclusive generation of gamers, where all systems competed with each other based on exclusives. And that's kind of behind us. I mean, you heard it from Square Enix earlier this year. Square Enix came right out and said, hey, we got to stop like doing these exclusive game deals. We need to focus on like being where the gamers are and being everywhere.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the switch to third-party support because we're going to see stuff that we haven't seen in the Switch era. We're going to see Call of Duty. We're probably going to see Final Fantasy. The new Final Fantasies.
Yep.
Here's the crazy thing. Outside of PC, because PC gets everything, or hey, you can emulate everything, right? Potentially Switch 2 might be the only platform of the console manufacturers that one day could literally have it all. They have all the major third-party games. They also have Sony and Microsoft's games, and they have exclusives. I want Sony and Microsoft to remember this whole generation when they said Nintendo's not a competitor. And then 10 years from now, when Nintendo's like the only console manufacturer still around, dominating with like 200 million in sales because they just give every game under the planet. Like, by the way, I'm not predicting that's going to happen. I think PlayStation's going to be pretty healthy for at least one more gen, but they got to make some changes.
PlayStation sells on name alone.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what's a console seller that they have. Spider-Man 2, maybe?
Spider-Man 2. That was pretty
But
big.
that underperformed.
They straight up said
very
it.
bad. They were very upset about the sales
The
numbers.
profit margins on that were not good.
Which sucks, but I have the game. I love it.
Yeah, it's a great game.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they actually had a number of releases already this year. Can't remember what they were though, besides Final Fantasy Rebirth.
course, Astro Bot comes
Yeah,
out.
Astro Bot
coming up.
comes
Yeah,
out.
that one looks hype.
I got that pre-ordered.
Yeah, that one looks hype for sure.
Yeah, I'm
Will
really
it
excited.
sell systems though?
You-
That's
you
the
don't-
thing. Like, will it?
No, I don't.
No,
I don't
it's
think it
gonna
will.
sell- I don't think it's gonna sell systems. The funny thing is that
Sadly,
yeah, sucks because it's one of their most creative games they've made in a while.
Yeah.
But like the thing that gets them in trouble is they keep spending all this money to make the games. They're like, oh, Astrobot probably wasn't like super expensive to make. I'm like, no, probably not compared to Spider-Man 2 with all the licensing stuff. Oh, but then we're hearing, oh, but yeah, they went and licensed Crash. They went and licensed Spider. I'm like, yeah, so they wrote a fat check to Microsoft. Like, so they just made that game more expensive.
Ratchet and Clank was what, $90 million or something?
Jesus Christ.
they're spending so much money. Like Sony is spending tremendous amounts, and I'm looking at the chat, and they're all hitting a lot of games. Like, okay, yeah, we have God of War Ragnarok, but of course that came out also on PS4. Good.
PS4, yeah.
Horizon Forbidden West, also PS4. Okay, all great games, all games that I've beat. I really, really enjoyed. But yeah, they all underperformed. I don't know about Ragnarok. I have to look, but I know Forbidden West definitely underperformed.
What's interesting too is like they released PSVR 2. They dropped like the Horizon game on it, and that's it. They haven't released a single exclusive or like any reason to buy the thing over a MetaQuest or anything else.
And even now they released
know.
an adapter so that you can play
So you
your
don't even need a
Steam
PlayStation
VR
5
games
anymore.
or something.
I have it. I
Yeah.
got the adapter.
Yeah.
I was testing it out. It was, and I got a good PC. Like I meet all the specs and clear them, but man, it was quite finicky.
Yeah.
Finicky to the point of frustration. I'm
It
like,
wasn't designed. It wasn't
ain't-
designed
yeah.
for that.
I
It was
ain't got time for this shit.
it was literally built to work perfectly with PS5, and it does.
Does.
But they're not releasing any damn games for it. So you have to hook it up to PC and go to other shops so you can actually play useful shit. But then it doesn't actually work well with PC because it was never designed for it. So then you're like, well, shit, why don't I just buy a MetaQuest or something like that? I get to play wirelessly with their shop, and then I can still plug that shit into my PC and play all the PC stuff on it. And by the way, I'm not like pumping up Meta here. I only mentioned the MetaQuest because it's consumer grade, it's everywhere,
Mhm.
and you can use it wirelessly. You don't have to have another system.
I have the Quest 2, and I also have the PC adapter for that, the cable.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool. Like it the way that works with the PC versus what I just experienced with the PS VR 2 is quite different.
Yeah.
Now I'm hoping that some shit gets ironed out, and maybe in a few months it'll be a little bit more user friendly, kind of like the PlayStation Portal. When I first used it, it just was very choppy, wasn't connecting good. But over time, there's been a lot of patches, and now I could actually use it anywhere in my house. I could use it other places, and it actually works good.
I feel like we're missing the best VR headset, guys. Labo.
Yeah.
Come on now.
Yeah.
I still
I
have
have
one in
it.
my closet,
I have
factory
it.
sealed though.
I got
Oh,
it.
that's good. That's good.
Of course, it's factory sealed. That's just probably
You know what though? It only is because I didn't find time to do it, and so many years have went on, and I'm like, nah, I'll just keep it sealed. I got other stuff I'm playing right now.
yeah. Who cares anymore? All right, it died out. It is what it is.
It did.
But good old Nintendo with their hold it to your face version of VR. Smart. I don't know who at Nintendo thought.
No strap.
You know what's a great idea? Look, it's one thing. Oh, it's a little front heavy to pull on the head. Yeah, you know what's also sucks about being front heavy? Having to hold your arms up in the air like this to use it. That I'd rather pull on my head. Thanks, but whatever.
Did you guys play just real quick, since we're talking about VR? Did you play that Mario Kart live? Did anyone get that when it came out?
Yeah, I have it. Yeah,
I bought it like as a gift for 2 different friends' kids, but I never bought it myself. And I'm curious, was it cool? Is it worth like trying to get on eBay if it's a good deal before it becomes like
I think you
scarce?
can get it fairly easy at like Target right now. I
Yeah,
think they still stock
so
it.
it's like it's fun. Because yeah,
Maybe
you
Black
build
Friday.
like real life Mario Kart courses, and then they overlay like AR stuff with it.
Yeah, I've seen it.
It
I've
has
seen it.
customization. Like you could
The
change
crazy
the
part
outfits.
is like when you're sitting there looking at your Switch and you're like playing the game, it does a really good job. Like you hit a speed burst, it makes it feel like you're fucking gunning it. And then you look over at your cart and it just went from going like this to like just a little bit faster. It's like not even that much faster. And yet they did such a really cool job with how honestly, it's one of the most inventive things they've done with Mario Kart in a long time.
Yeah.
The problem is, of course, it's just like the Toys to Life thing. It's kind of like, yeah, but it requires people to physically build courses and get friends together with multiple copies to play together.
Yeah.
Like it's just asking a lot, even though it's real. To me, like obviously this didn't take off for him. I think it sold. I mean, it sold some millions, but it didn't take off. I don't think we're going to get another version of it anytime soon.
Yeah.
But this feels like what they should have had as an interactive experience at the Nintendo Museum. Because then people are gathering together. That's the perfect way to do it. Where have them have a whole area with you provide all the objects to build your own courses.
Dude, have Four Swords Adventures, and then have Pac-Man versus.
Hell yeah.